Dr. Maya Johnson took a deep breath as she stepped through the revolving doors of Riverside Medical Center, the prestigious hospital that had long been her dream workplace. The gleaming marble floors and expansive atriums filled with natural light were awe-inspiring. But as she walked through the bustling hallways, a sense of unease settled in her stomach. She could feel the weight of skeptical gazes lingering on her, the whispers blending into a cacophony of doubt that seemed to follow her every step. Maya adjusted her white coat, a symbol of her hard-earned accomplishment, and walked towards the nurses' station, where a cluster of doctors gathered. As she approached, she caught snippets of hushed conversations. "Can you believe they hired her?" a voice said, laced with disdain. It belonged to Dr. Alan Pierce, the chief resident, a tall man with sharp features who commanded attention with his presence. Maya had heard about his reputation, brilliant but arrogant and quick to undermine anyone he deemed a threat. "It's her first day. Let's see how she handles it." Another voice chimed in, barely suppressing a snicker. Maya's heart raced. She toughed it out, reminding herself of her purpose here. She was not just another resident. She was a skilled physician who had worked tirelessly to reach this point. She forced herself to make eye contact with her colleagues, offering a confident smile that felt more like a mask than a reflection of her emotions. "Dr. Johnson, right?" Dr. Pierce's voice cut through the chatter as he approached her, a condescending smile plastered on his face. "Welcome to Riverside. I hope you're ready for the real world of medicine. It can be a bit overwhelming." Maya held her ground, meeting his gaze with determination. "I appreciate the welcome, Dr. Pierce. I'm ready for whatever comes my way." "Good to hear," he replied, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Let's see if you can keep up during rounds." As the morning progressed, Maya joined the team for their first round of the day. The air was thick with tension as they moved from patient to patient, discussing diagnoses and treatment plans. Maya's turn came when she presented a particularly challenging case of a middle-aged man with multiple comorbidities. She laid out her findings clearly, her voice steady despite the scrutiny around her. "Based on the patient's symptoms, I believe a combination of medication and lifestyle changes will be the most effective approach," she concluded, her heart pounding in her chest. "Interesting diagnosis, Dr. Johnson," Dr. Pierce interrupted, a smirk dancing on his lips. "But given the patient's history, wouldn't it be smarter to take a more conservative approach? You wouldn't want to overwhelm him, would you?" The laughter that followed from some team members felt like daggers, and Maya's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She could sense their doubt creeping in, but she took a deep breath, reminding herself of her worth. "I understand your concern, Dr. Pierce, but I believe that proactive measures are essential in this case. The patient's quality of life is at stake. Let's not get ahead of ourselves," he replied dismissively, turning to the rest of the team. "We'll go with my recommendation for now." As they moved on, Maya felt the weight of their scrutiny, the whispers of doubt echoing in her mind. She had always known that being a Black woman in medicine would present unique challenges, but experiencing it firsthand was another level of disheartening. The laughter, the sideways glances, it was as if they were waiting for her to fail. Later that day, Maya found a moment of solace in the doctor's lounge, where she spotted her best friend, Dr. Sarah Lee, seated at a table, her laptop open in front of her. Sarah looked up and immediately noticed the storm brewing in Maya's eyes. "Maya, hey, how's the first day going?" she asked, genuine concern etched on her face. Maya sank into the chair across from her, exhaling deeply. "It's intense. I feel like I'm under a microscope. Dr. Pierce seems determined to make me doubt myself." Sarah leaned in, her eyes fierce with determination. "You're not going to let him get to you, right? You've worked too hard for this." "I know, but it's hard to shake off the feeling that they don't see me as a competent doctor. It's like they're just waiting for me to mess up," Maya admitted, her voice thick with frustration. "Forget about what they think. You're here because you deserve to be. Your skills can save lives, Maya. Remember that," Sarah encouraged, a reassuring smile breaking through Maya's anxiety. Maya felt a flicker of hope at her friend's words. With Sarah's support, she could push through the challenges ahead. "You're right. I just need to stay focused and prove myself, no matter what." As the day wore on, Maya steeled herself for the battles that lay ahead, determined not to let the whispers drown out her passion for medicine. She was ready to fight for her place in this world, one patient at a time. Maya Johnson sat alone in the dimly lit break room, her brow furrowed as she pored over the medical records sprawled across the table. The fluorescent lights flickered above her, creating an almost surreal atmosphere as she meticulously analyzed each detail of a complex case she had been studying. Hours had passed since the hospital's hustle and bustle had quieted down for the night, but her determination to find a breakthrough kept her anchored to the small table, surrounded by crumpled coffee cups and notes filled with her hurried scrawls. "Hey, Maya." Dr. Sarah Lee's cheerful voice cut through the silence as she entered the room, her presence instantly brightening the space. "Still burning the midnight oil, I see." Maya looked up, a faint smile breaking through her fatigue. "Just trying to make sense of this case. I think I might have found something that could change the treatment protocol." Sarah leaned over, her eyes scanning the pages filled with Maya's notes. "Really? What did you find?" Maya's enthusiasm bubbled over as she explained her findings, her voice imbued with excitement. "I was reviewing the patient's history, and it seems like there's a pattern with similar cases. If we adjust the treatment plan to include this new method I found, it could improve their recovery rate significantly." "That's incredible, Maya," Sarah exclaimed, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "But you know how the others are. If you present this, especially to Dr. Pierce, he might dismiss your ideas outright." "I know," Maya sighed, her enthusiasm dampened by the reality of her situation. "But if I don't say anything, who will? This could help so many patients." As she spoke, the door swung open, and Dr. Alan Pierce strolled in, flanked by Dr. Mark Davis. Their laughter echoed off the walls, and Maya felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. She quickly gathered her papers, trying to shield her findings from their view. "Ah, Dr. Johnson, still working hard, I see," Dr. Pierce remarked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You should really take a break. Burnout doesn't look good on a doctor." Maya clenched her jaw, refusing to let his words get under her skin. "I'm fine, Dr. Pierce. Just trying to ensure my patients get the best care possible." Dr. Davis scoffed. "Best care? You mean trying to impress us with your theories? Let's be honest, Maya. You're not exactly a pioneer in this field." Maya took a deep breath, her heart racing as she fought to maintain her composure. "Actually, I believe I've discovered a viable alternative to the current treatment. It's backed by recent studies." "Studies? From who?" "The internet." Dr. Pierce laughed, his eyes glinting with mockery. "I'd be careful throwing around words like breakthrough when you're still figuring out the basics." Maya's mind raced as she felt the weight of their scrutiny bear down on her. Yet, amidst the oppressive atmosphere, a surge of determination ignited within her. "I'm confident in my findings. I'll present them in the next team meeting." With that, she gathered her papers and walked out, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear their laughter fading behind her, but she refused to let their ridicule deter her. She needed to advocate for her patients, no matter the cost. When Maya arrived at the emergency room the following day, a tense atmosphere hung in the air. A critically injured patient had just been wheeled in, and chaos erupted as the team scrambled to assess the situation. She observed the frantic efforts of her colleagues, their movements frantic yet disorganized. "Dr. Johnson, take a look at this," Dr. Davis shouted over the noise, pointing at the monitors. "We need to stabilize him quickly." Maya's instincts kicked in. "No, wait. We should administer the new protocol I mentioned. It could help with his recovery." Dr. Pierce stepped forward, his expression dismissive. "With all due respect, Maya, we don't have time for experimental treatments. We're sticking to the plan." Maya's heart raced as she felt the panic begin to creep in. "But if we follow my suggestions, enough." Dr. Pierce interrupted, his voice harsh. "We're doing this my way. You're not in charge here." Just then, the patient's condition worsened, alarms ringing out as the monitors displayed alarming numbers. Maya's mind raced as she realized that time was slipping away. "We need to intervene now. His vitals are dropping. We can't afford to waste time." She stepped forward, her voice steady as she took command. "I'm taking the lead on this. Dr. Pierce, please assist me with the intubation." "Dr. Davis, prepare the medication," I suggested. For a moment, the room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Dr. Pierce hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. But with the patient's life on the line, he begrudgingly nodded, stepping aside to let Maya take charge. As she moved with precision and confidence, every ounce of her training and instinct guided her hands. The tension in the room shifted, and for the first time, her colleagues fell into a rhythm, working together under her direction. With a deep breath, she administered the treatment she had advocated for, praying it would work. Moments passed like hours, but finally, the monitors began to stabilize. The patient's vitals improved, and the tension in the room eased. Maya let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding, a mixture of relief and triumph flooding her senses. Dr. Pierce looked stunned, his brow furrowed as he processed what had just happened. For the first time, there was a flicker of respect in his gaze, though he quickly masked it with a cold demeanor. "Well, that was unexpected," he muttered, his voice low. Maya's heart raced, but she refused to let his condescension overshadow her success. "It wasn't unexpected. It was necessary. We need to be open to new approaches if we want to save lives." As she stepped back, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by the realization that she had just proven herself in the most critical of moments. But deep down, she knew this battle was far from over. The true test awaited her in the days to come. Maya stood outside the conference room, her heart pounding as she adjusted her white coat and took a deep breath. The meeting was about to commence, and she couldn't shake off the feeling of impending scrutiny. The incident with the critical patient had sparked both attention and controversy, and now she had the chance to share her perspective. As she entered the room, she caught sight of Dr. Pierce sitting at the head of the table, his expression a mix of annoyance and disdain. "Thank you all for gathering." Dr. Anderson, the hospital administrator, began, his voice steady and authoritative. "We're here to discuss the recent emergency case and evaluate our processes moving forward." Maya took her seat, her eyes darting around the room. Some of her colleagues offered her tentative smiles, while others averted their gaze. Dr. Pierce leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, ready to downplay her contributions. She felt the weight of his skepticism like a physical presence. When the discussion shifted to Maya's role in the emergency, she felt a spark of hope. Dr. Anderson turned to her, his expression earnest. "Dr. Johnson, your quick thinking during that critical moment saved the patient's life. Can you walk us through your decision-making process?" Maya nodded, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "I noticed the patient's breathing was deteriorating rapidly. Based on the initial tests, I believe that a more aggressive treatment plan could stabilize her." Dr. Pierce interjected, his tone dismissive. "While I appreciate your enthusiasm, it was a team effort. We all contributed to the outcome." Maya clenched her fists under the table, willing herself to remain calm. "Yes, Dr. Pierce, but at that moment, the patient needed immediate intervention. I felt compelled to take decisive action based on my assessment." Dr. Anderson glanced between them, sensing the undercurrents of conflict. It's important to recognize that every team member plays a vital role in patient care. "Dr. Johnson, your insight was invaluable." A ripple of tension coursed through the room. Maya felt a rush of warmth at the acknowledgement, but she could see Dr. Pierce's jaw tighten. His eyes narrowed slightly, and she knew this was far from over. As the meeting progressed, Maya spoke more about the case, detailing her rationale and the steps she took. The attendees listened intently, and for the first time, she noticed a few nods of agreement from her colleagues. The atmosphere shifted slightly, and it gave her a glimmer of hope. However, as the meeting concluded, Dr. Pierce's expression darkened. "Let's not forget the importance of teamwork. We wouldn't want to set a precedent where one person's contributions overshadow the collective effort," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Maya felt the sting of his words, but chose to ignore him. "I believe it's crucial to acknowledge individual insights, especially when lives are at stake," she replied, her tone resolute. Once the meeting adjourned, Maya stepped out into the hallway, her heart racing. She was met by Dr. Sarah Lee, who had been waiting anxiously. "How did it go?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with concern. Maya sighed, running a hand through her hair. It was complicated. Dr. Anderson acknowledged my role, but Dr. Pierce is clearly not happy about it. Don't let him get to you, Sarah said, her voice firm. You did what was right for that patient. Your skills are undeniable. Maya gave a faint smile, grateful for Sarah's support. I know, but I can't shake the feeling that he's going to try to undermine me even more. As they walked through the bustling hospital corridors, Maya noticed whispers and sidelong glances from a few colleagues. It was as if her actions during the emergency had triggered a new wave of scrutiny. I'm not ready for this, Maya admitted, her voice trembling slightly. You're stronger than you think, Maya. Just keep focusing on the patients. Your work will speak for itself, Sarah encouraged, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Despite Sarah's words, Maya couldn't shake the unease. She knew Dr. Pierce was plotting against her, and the thought made her stomach churn. As they reached the staff lounge, Maya was met by a group of doctors engaged in hushed conversations. The moment she entered, the chatter ceased, and she felt their eyes on her. Did you hear about Dr. Johnson's little hero act? One of the residents whispered just loud enough for Maya to catch. Yeah, like she's some kind of savior, another one chimed in, smirking. Maya's heart sank as she realized the gossip was already spreading. She took a deep breath, steeling herself against the judgment. She would not let their words define her. With each step, she reminded herself of her purpose, to save lives and make a difference, no matter the obstacles. Maya stood on the small stage in the hospital auditorium, her heart pounding as she gripped the edges of the podium. The award she was about to receive for her quick thinking during the recent emergency was meant to be a moment of celebration. Yet the air felt heavy with the weight of Dr. Alan Pierce's lingering disdain. As she glanced out into the audience, she caught a glimpse of him, arms crossed and a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth, as if he were waiting for her to stumble. Dr. Maya Johnson, the moderator announced, for her exemplary handling of a critical case in the ER. The applause that followed was warm but distant. Maya forced a smile and stepped forward to accept the award, her hands trembling slightly as she took the plaque. Thank you all, she began, her voice steady despite the tumultuous emotions swirling within her. I'm grateful for this recognition, but I want to emphasize that it was a team effort. We all play a part in saving lives. As she spoke, she felt Dr. Pierce's eyes boring into her, and she struggled to shake off the unease. The applause faded, but the feeling of isolation remained. After the ceremony, she returned to the bustling halls of Riverside Medical Center, where the whispers followed her like a shadow. Did you hear? She actually got an award, one resident remarked to another, their tone dripping with skepticism. Yeah, but it's not like she did anything we couldn't have done, Dr. Pierce added loudly enough for Maya to hear, his voice mocking. Maya's heart sank. Despite the recognition, she felt as though the victory was tainted. She had saved a life. Yet here she was, still fighting to prove herself worthy in a space that felt increasingly hostile. Later that day, she met Sarah in the cafeteria, hoping for some comfort. You won an award, Maya. That's incredible, Sarah exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with pride. Thanks, but it doesn't feel like a win, Maya admitted, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. Dr. Pierce is still undermining me. I can't shake the feeling that they're all just waiting for me to fail. Have you considered confronting him? Sarah asked, her voice laced with concern. You deserve to be treated with respect. You've earned it. Maya sighed, pushing her tray aside. I don't know, Sarah. What if it backfires? What if I end up making things worse for myself? Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even when it's scary. You can't let him walk all over you, Sarah urged. Maya nodded, but the fear of retaliation loomed large in her mind. Instead of confronting her colleagues, she decided to immerse herself in her work. She found solace in her patients, pouring her heart into their care, but the gnawing anxiety remained. Days passed, and a new patient arrived in the ER, a middle-aged man presenting with baffling symptoms that no one could decipher. Maya's instincts kicked in, and she felt a spark of determination. This was her chance to showcase her skills, to prove to herself and her colleagues that she was capable of handling complex cases. As the team gathered around the patient's bed, Maya took a deep breath. I believe we should consider an autoimmune disorder, she suggested, her voice firm yet calm. The symptoms align, and we can run specific tests to confirm. Dr. Pierce, standing to her right, immediately scoffed. That's a stretch, Maya. We should stick to the basics first. You know, not every case has to be complicated. Maya's frustration bubbled beneath the surface. With all due respect, Dr. Pierce, the pattern here suggests otherwise. If we don't act quickly, we might miss the window for effective treatment. Or we could waste resources on unnecessary tests, he shot back, his tone dripping with condescension. Ignoring him, Maya focused on the patient, who looked at her with a flicker of hope. I'm going to fight for your health, she whispered, meeting his gaze. We'll figure this out together. As she began to gather information and formulate a treatment plan, she felt a sense of purpose surging through her. This was what she was meant to do, advocate for those who couldn't advocate for themselves. Days turned into nights as Maya dove deep into research, determined to uncover the truth behind the man's illness. Each moment spent poring over charts, consulting with specialists, and running tests was a step toward not just saving a life, but also reclaiming her identity as a physician. With her mind racing, she quietly prepared for the next team meeting where she would present her findings. She knew that this was her opportunity to shine, to show everyone that she could withstand the pressure and emerge victorious. And as the details of the case unfolded in her mind, a fierce resolve took hold. She was not just a doctor. She was a force to be reckoned with. As Maya Johnson sat in her cramped office, surrounded by medical journals and case files, she felt the pressure of the hospital's expectations weighing heavily on her shoulders. She was deep into research for her challenging patient, a man in his 40s with a rare autoimmune disorder. Hours had passed since she first pulled the file, and the fluorescent lights flickered slightly, adding to her sense of urgency. Just as she was about to take a break, she heard a sharp knock on the door. Dr. Johnson? It was Dr. Alan Pierce, his voice dripping with condescension. I hope I'm not interrupting your research. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his posture confident, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Maya straightened in her chair, her heart racing. I was just reviewing the case of Mr. Thompson. I believe I've found a potential treatment strategy. Pierce raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Oh, and you think you can handle this one without my oversight? It's a complex case, Maya. You shouldn't bite off more than you can chew. Maya clenched her jaw, refusing to let his words undermine her confidence. I appreciate your concern, Dr. Pierce, but I've spent the last few days studying this condition extensively. I believe I can manage it effectively. Pierce stepped closer, invading her space, his tone patronizing. You know, sometimes it's better to let someone with more experience take the lead. I can't let you risk a patient's life with your enthusiasm. Frustration bubbled within her. This isn't about enthusiasm. It's about patient care. I'm qualified to make decisions here. She maintained eye contact, her voice steady and unwavering. Is that so? He leaned against her desk, crossing his arms. Let's see how you feel after the next procedure. I wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself in front of the attending staff. Maya took a deep breath, knowing that standing her ground was essential. I'll be leading that procedure. If you choose to undermine me, then that's on you. Pierce's expression darkened, but before he could respond, the hospital's alarm system blared loudly, cutting through their tense standoff. An emergency had been declared in the operating room. Both doctors instinctively turned to head towards the chaos. As they arrived, the scene was frantic. A patient lay on the table, his vital signs dropping rapidly. Maya's heart raced. The stakes were high, and she felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. She quickly assessed the situation, her mind racing through potential interventions. "Give me a crash cart," she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. She glanced at Pierce, who was hesitating, clearly unsure of his next step. "Now, Dr. Pierce!" Suddenly, Pierce moved to take control, barking orders to the nurses. "We need to stabilize him with the standard protocol. Get the force started on fluids." Maya shook her head, her brow furrowed in determination. "No, we need to administer the new treatment I propose for cases like this. It could save his life, but we have to act fast." Pierce hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "Maya, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The traditional method has worked before. This isn't just about tradition. It's about what's best for the patient." Maya's voice rose, fueled by her passion and urgency. The nursing staff exchanged glances, sensing the tension. Finally, she took a step closer to the patient's side, her hands steady. "I'm taking the lead. You can either support me or stand aside. But I will not let this patient die because of outdated practices." The room fell silent. The attending physician, who had just arrived, glanced between Maya and Pierce, sensing the gravity of the situation. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice authoritative. Maya seized the moment. "We need to administer the new treatment protocol I developed. It's a risk, but it's a risk I believe we must take to save this man's life." The attending physician nodded, his expression serious. "All right, let's do it. Time is of the essence." With a sense of relief flooding through her, Maya directed the team as they worked quickly. She felt the moment shift in her favor, the tension in the air easing as everyone rallied around her instructions. After what felt like an eternity, the patient's vitals began to stabilize. Maya exhaled deeply, a mix of exhaustion and triumph washing over her. She had fought hard for this moment, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of respect from her colleagues. As the team began to clean up, Pierce's expression darkened again. "You got lucky this time, Maya. Don't think this changes anything." Maya turned to face him, her expression resolute. "It's not luck, Dr. Pierce. It's skill, and I'm here to stay." At that moment, she resolved to keep fighting, not just for herself, but for every patient who deserved a doctor unafraid to challenge the norms. The battle may not be over, but she was ready to confront whatever came next. As the investigation unfolded, Maya found herself in a whirlwind of emotions and determination. She had spent countless hours piecing together evidence against Dr. Pierce, meticulously gathering testimonies from colleagues who had witnessed his manipulative behavior. In the sterile, fluorescent-lit confines of Riverside Medical Center, she felt a sense of urgency. The walls of the hospital, once a source of pride, now felt like a battleground. Maya sat in her office, surrounded by stacks of notes and statements from her peers. Dr. Sarah Lee entered, her expression a mixture of concern and encouragement. "Maya, are you ready for the meeting? This is it. You've got to stay strong." Maya sighed, rubbing her temples. "I just can't shake the feeling that Dr. Pierce will twist this around. You know how he is. He'll try to make me look like the villain." Sarah leaned against the desk, crossing her arms. "You're not the villain. You're the one fighting for what's right. Remember that." As they made their way to the boardroom, the air thickened with tension. Maya's heart raced, each beat echoing in her ears. She entered the room, greeted by the stern faces of the hospital board members. Dr. Pierce sat at the far end, a smug expression plastered on his face, as if he were already anticipating his triumph. The meeting commenced, and the board members listened attentively as Maya presented her findings. She spoke clearly, outlining the incidents where Dr. Pierce had undermined her and others, emphasizing his pattern of behavior. "This isn't just about one incident. This is about a culture of fear and manipulation that he has fostered in this hospital," she stated, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside. Dr. Pierce was quick to interject. "Maya, these are merely accusations. You're trying to discredit me because you feel threatened by my experience," he shot back, his tone dripping with condescension. But Maya had anticipated his deflection. "Actually, Dr. Pierce, I have evidence." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small recorder, a device that had captured their previous conversations when he had dismissed her ideas and belittled her contributions. The room fell silent, tension crackling in the air. "What do you mean, evidence?" Dr. Pierce's voice rose defensively. Maya pressed play, and the room filled with the sound of their past exchanges. Dr. Pierce's voice was unmistakable as he belittled her ideas. "You're overstepping, Maya. You're inexperienced. Leave the real decisions to those who know what they're doing." Gasps filled the room as her colleagues recognized the truth in her recordings. Maya felt a rush of vindication, a wave of strength washing over her. Dr. Pierce's face turned pale as the evidence laid bare his manipulations. The board members shifted in their seats, exchanging glances filled with disbelief. When the recording ended, Maya took a deep breath. This is not just about me. It's about the countless others who have faced the same treatment. It's time for accountability, she concluded, her voice resonating with conviction. The board deliberated quietly, and the atmosphere shifted as the weight of the evidence sank in. Finally, one of the members, a seasoned physician named Dr. Roberts, spoke up. We cannot ignore this. Dr. Pierce's actions have not only harmed Maya, but have jeopardized patient care as well. The decision was swift. Dr. Pierce was held accountable for his actions, leading to his dismissal from the hospital. Maya felt a flood of emotions: relief, triumph, and a sense of justice. She had faced the storm and emerged victorious. In the aftermath, the board recognized Maya's resilience and exceptional skills, promoting her to a leadership position. As she stood in front of her peers, a newfound respect shone in their eyes. Maya couldn't help but smile, realizing she had finally made her mark. As the days passed, she embraced her new role, determined to foster a culture of support and collaboration. Maya began mentoring a new generation of doctors, sharing her experiences and instilling in them the belief that their voices mattered. She often reflected on her journey, a testament to resilience and the power of standing up against injustice. With every medical student she guided, Maya felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that she was not just healing patients but also shaping the future of medicine. The echoes of her struggles faded, replaced by the laughter and enthusiasm of those eager to learn, a reminder that her fight had sparked a change that would resonate for years to come.